The grand hall sparkled like a dream. Crystal chandeliers dripped light over polished marble floors. Elegant floral arrangements lined the aisle, and the soft hum of a string quartet filled the air. Every guest, from business partners to distant relatives, sat in anticipation, their cameras ready, their smiles polite but eager. Today was supposed to be perfect. Jae-hyun Kim, the 32-year-old CEO of Hansong Corporation, stood at the altar. His tuxedo was flawless, tailored to perfection, but his hands betrayed him. They trembled slightly. 5 years of careful planning, 5 years of whispered promises, 5 years of loving her, all leading to this moment. And now everything hung by a thread. Hannah Park, his fiancée of 5 years, should have been walking toward him, radiant and smiling, the embodiment of the life he had imagined. Instead, she froze halfway down the aisle. Her long hair framed a pale, strained face, her eyes wide and bright, but not with joy. Something darker shimmered there. Anger, fear, and betrayal. The music swelled. Guests whispered, craning their necks. Jae-hyun's heart thumped painfully. Hannah! His voice was calm, but inside, a storm raged. She turned toward the crowd, her voice trembling but clear. Everyone. He's not who you think he is. A hush fell over the room. Gasps rippled through the audience. His business partners looked at each other, confused and alarmed. The string quartet faltered, leaving only the soft hum of a few murmuring voices. What do you mean? Jae-hyun asked, stepping forward, his hands tightening into fists. I can't marry him, and... Her voice broke slightly, catching on the words that had probably been rehearsed for days. He's infertile. He can't give me children. I've wasted 5 years. The words struck Jae-hyun like a punch to the chest. Infertile. After 5 years of love, trust, and devotion, she had chosen this moment to humiliate him in front of everyone. The room felt as if it had tilted, the chandeliers swinging slightly in the sudden silence. You what? Jae-hyun whispered, disbelief freezing him. I can't pretend anymore, she said, shaking her head. And just like that, she turned on her heel and walked away. The doors closed behind her, leaving him standing alone amid the shocked whispers and stunned silence. For a moment, Jae-hyun couldn't breathe. 5 years of plans, of love, of trust, all evaporated in a single shattering moment. And yet, he couldn't stop the wedding, not really. Because today wasn't only about love. It was about Hansong Corporation finalizing $1 billion deal that required him to be married by the end of the day. His jaw tightened. His heart ached. But the cold steel of necessity took over. He couldn't afford to lose everything. His company, his reputation, his future. Anger and desperation coursed through him as he stormed into the kitchen, where the staff scurried in a frenzy. That's when he saw her, Aaliyah. Aaliyah, a beautiful black woman in a crisp server uniform, moved gracefully through the chaos, her dark eyes calm amidst the panic. She carried a tray of hors d'oeuvres, her hands steady, her smile polite. He had noticed her before. Always polite, always hardworking, but never like this. Today, she was the only thing standing out in a room that had just turned his life upside down. He approached her, voice sharp, commanding. You, I need you. She looked up, startled, almost dropping the tray. Excuse me? You, marry me. His voice was low, intense. Now, her brow furrowed. I what? Are you insane? I don't have a choice, he said, pulling a contract from his pocket. This is legal. Sign it. Or this company, this wedding, this deal, all of it, falls apart. Aaliyah stared at him, stunned. She could walk away. She could refuse. But something in his eyes, a raw, desperate vulnerability, made her hesitate. You're what? A billionaire? And you want me to marry you? She whispered. Yes, today. No questions. No excuses. You help me, and I'll make sure you're compensated beyond your imagination. But you must agree now. Her heart raced. The room was chaotic, whispers filling the corners. Cameras were rolling. Guests were confused, some snapping pictures, some staring in shock. And yet, something in Jae-hyun's posture, the way his shoulders sagged, the pain in his eyes, tugged at her. Within the hour, Aaliyah was in a borrowed gown, standing at the altar beside Jaehyun. The guests whispered in disbelief, some laughing nervously, some shaking their heads. The deal was saved. The papers were signed. She had married a billionaire she barely knew. But the air between them was thick with tension. She didn't know him. He didn't know her. And yet, there was an undeniable pull, a spark neither could explain. After the ceremony, when the hall had emptied, Jaehyun turned to her. "I didn't choose this. You didn't choose this. But maybe this is fate," he said softly. Aaliyah, still trembling, whispered, "I don't even know your story. I'll tell you everything if you stay," he replied. And in that quiet moment, a fragile connection began to form between them. Two strangers forced together, yet slowly drawn to each other by circumstances neither expected. The mansion was quiet that night, save for the distant hum of the city. Jaehyun sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the contract that had just bound them. Aaliyah stood near the window, looking out, her thoughts racing. Neither knew what tomorrow would bring. But one thing was certain. What started as desperation and humiliation could grow into something else. Something sweeter, deeper, and entirely unexpected. Jaehyun, the man who had been dumped for being infertile, now wondered if he could love again. And Aaliyah, the woman thrust into a billionaire's world, wondered if fate had chosen her for a reason, or if she was just a pawn in a powerful man's desperate game. The night stretched on, filled with unspoken questions, raw emotions, and the quiet beginnings of a story that neither of them would ever forget. The mansion was impossibly quiet that morning. The golden sun slanted through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Aaliyah wandered through the expansive living room, still in the borrowed wedding gown from the previous night. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, how a billionaire had forced her to marry him, how she had signed a contract she barely understood, and how she had become the center of whispers and shocked glances. Jaehyun, on the other hand, was already awake, sitting at the breakfast table with his laptop open. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly messy. For all his meticulous control over life and business, last night had thrown him off balance. Hannah's betrayal still stung, but more than that, the fact that he now had Aaliyah, someone he didn't know, someone completely unexpected, sharing his life, unsettled him more than he could admit. "Breakfast is ready," the housekeeper announced nervously, entering the room with a tray of toast and fruit. She hesitated, eyes darting between the two of them. Aaliyah glanced at Jaehyun. He was typing rapidly, focused, but his jaw was tight. His presence was intimidating, yet strangely human. Something about the way he carried himself, even when angry or desperate, drew her in. She sat across from him, unsure what to say. "Do you want tea?" she asked tentatively, trying to break the silence. He looked up, his dark eyes piercing, but softened slightly. "Yes, green tea." The first moments were awkward, filled with small, careful gestures. Aaliyah poured the tea, hands trembling slightly. Jaehyun accepted it with a nod, sipping quietly. The silence stretched, but not in an unpleasant way. It was the kind of silence where two people are aware of each other, cautious, measuring, trying to understand. "I don't even know your name," he said finally, breaking the tension. "Aaliyah," she replied. "And you're Jaehyun Kim, the CEO." "Correct. But right now, you can just call me Jaehyun." He hesitated, then added softly, "You don't have to act like you're here for me. You're here for yourself too. And I want to make this as bearable as possible for you." Aaliyah's heart skipped. Despite the strangeness of the situation, there was an unexpected gentleness in his tone. For a man so powerful, so used to control, he was showing her consideration. It made her nervous and curious. Later, as she explored the mansion, Aaliyah realized how enormous it was. Every room was immaculate, gleaming with polished wood and marble. Expensive paintings adorned the walls. The sheer scale was overwhelming. Jaehyun found her in the library, staring at a wall lined with books. "Relax," he said, closing the distance. "You're not a guest, you're my wife now. You can live here comfortably. But I need you to follow some rules until we settle everything legally." "Rules?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Simple. Don't touch my work files, don't go into the staff quarters, and don't leave without telling me. Other than that, you're free. Aaliyah nodded slowly, understanding the balance of authority and trust he was trying to establish. She had expected coldness, arrogance, or anger, but not this careful respect. You make it sound manageable, she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Jaehyun's lips twitched. Manageable is better than disastrous. Trust me. That evening, after a long day of awkward interactions and polite distance, Aaliyah found herself in the kitchen. She had been curious about his habits, his tastes, and she began experimenting with a recipe she had learned from her mother, a traditional dish from her hometown. Jaehyun entered the kitchen, curious about the aroma. What's that? He asked, intrigued. Aaliyah turned, startled, but quickly smiled. Just a little something from home. Want to try? He hesitated, then nodded. The first bite made his eyes widen. This is incredible. Sweet, rich, comforting. Aaliyah felt warmth spread through her chest. You really like it? She asked a little shyly. He nodded again, and for the first time, the tension between them seemed to ease. They laughed softly over small mishaps in the kitchen. The spoon that slipped, the sauce that boiled over, and Aaliyah realized something unexpected. She enjoyed being near him. Even though this marriage had been forced, even though she didn't fully trust him yet, there was something honest about him, something real. That night, they found themselves sitting in the study, a quiet moment stretching between them. The mansion was silent, save for the distant hum of city life. Why did she say you were infertile? Aaliyah asked carefully, breaking the silence. Jaehyun's face darkened. Hannah. She wanted to humiliate me. She knew the words would sting. And maybe she didn't want to face the truth herself. But yes, there's some truth in what she said. I've had complications in the past. But it doesn't define me. It doesn't define love. Aaliyah studied him, seeing a side of him that most people would never see. The hurt, the vulnerability, the raw human emotion. For a billionaire, he was fragile in ways money could not protect. I don't care about that, she said softly. You're more than that. You're human. And she paused, unsure. I think there's more to you than what anyone else sees. He looked at her, surprised. Then, slowly, a smile appeared. Maybe you're the first person to see it. And maybe that's why I'm glad you're here. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world outside, the deals, the chaos, the forced marriage, disappeared. Two strangers, forced together, were beginning to understand each other. The days that followed were a mix of awkwardness and unexpected tenderness. Aaliyah learned the layout of the mansion, Jaehyun's habits, and the rhythm of his life. Jaehyun learned her preferences, her quiet strength, and her stubborn yet kind nature. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner alone, he looked at her and said softly, I don't know how this marriage will turn out, but I do know you make this bearable. You make it human. Aaliyah felt a flutter in her chest. And you make it less frightening. Even though this was all so sudden, I think I can trust you. For the first time since the wedding, both of them allowed themselves to imagine a future. Not one built on contracts or desperation, but on something sweet, fragile, and entirely new. And in that moment, the walls between them began to crumble, replaced by curiosity, connection, and the very first sparks of something neither of them had expected. Love. The days in the mansion passed like a strange, surreal dream. Jaehyun and Aaliyah were no longer strangers, yet the air between them carried an unspoken tension, a delicate balance of curiosity, attraction, and wariness. They shared meals, laughed over small domestic mishaps, and slowly discovered the little habits that made the other human. Yet beneath the fragile harmony, shadows lurked. Secrets that neither wanted to confront threatened to unravel everything. It was early morning when Jaehyun's phone buzzed insistently on the bedside table. Aaliyah, still wrapped in her silk robe, was sipping tea in the kitchen. Jaehyun answered the call, his face tightening as he listened. Don't worry, everything is under control, he said finally, ending the call. But the frown didn't fade. Something about the message had unsettled him. a subtle reminder that despite the temporary peace in the mansion, his world outside was as turbulent as ever. Aaliyah noticed, approaching cautiously. "Everything okay?" she asked softly. He looked at her, hesitating. Then he shook his head. "It's just business. Nothing you need to worry about." But she did worry. She had glimpsed the sharp edge behind his calm, the man capable of bending the world to his will, but vulnerable in ways no one else had seen. She wanted to ask more, but something in his eyes told her it wasn't safe to push. Later that day, as Aaliyah cleaned the living room, a delivery arrived. The messenger handed over a sleek, black envelope addressed to Jae-hyun. He tore it open, scanning the contents quickly. His lips pressed into a thin line, and his hand shook slightly. "What is it?" Aaliyah asked, curiosity mingling with concern. "Nothing," he muttered, slipping the envelope into his briefcase. But the secrecy only fueled her imagination. Who had sent it? What was in it? She wanted to ask, to understand, to comfort, but she hesitated. The mansion felt enormous, and suddenly she realized how fragile their connection really was. The next evening, Jae-hyun hosted a dinner for key business associates in the mansion. Aaliyah, dressed simply yet elegantly, tried to stay in the background, but she couldn't ignore the subtle glances from the guests, the whispered comments, or the way one woman, a glamorous business consultant, kept leaning closer to Jae-hyun under the pretense of discussion. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. She had never felt jealousy like this before. The thought of him, her husband, being admired, flirted with, or even noticed by other women made her heart pound painfully. She wanted to speak, to intervene, to claim some invisible right to his attention. But she restrained herself. After dinner, Jae-hyun walked her to her room. The tension between them was palpable. "You look troubled," he said carefully, his voice low. Aaliyah looked at him, eyes glistening. "I just don't like seeing other women so close to you." Jae-hyun froze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "Aaliyah, you have nothing to worry about. I am entirely yours." Those words, though soft, struck her in a way that warmed her heart. Despite the forced nature of their marriage, despite the chaos that had brought them together, he was beginning to show her loyalty, affection, and care. A week later, Aaliyah was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she overheard a heated conversation in the study. She paused, straining to listen. Jae-hyun's voice was tense, urgent. "I can't delay this. The deal depends on the wedding being recognized. No exceptions." "Sir, there's a complication with your ex-fiancée," another voice replied. Aaliyah's heart skipped. "Hannah? The woman who had humiliated him at the altar?" Jae-hyun's voice was low, dangerous. "If she tries to interfere, everything falls apart. Everything we've built, gone. I won't let her destroy this, not again." Aaliyah stepped back silently, her mind racing. She realized now just how fragile their situation truly was. This marriage, this strange bond, was not just about them. It was entangled with his empire, his reputation, and the ghosts of a past he had not fully shared. That night, after the chaos had died down, Jae-hyun approached Aaliyah. She was sitting by the window, watching the city lights twinkle below. "Why do you look so pensive?" he asked softly, sitting beside her. "I overheard some of your conversation," she admitted, voice trembling. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I realized how complicated everything is. Hannah, your past, your company, and me, we're just thrown into this, aren't we?" Jae-hyun's expression softened. He took her hand gently. "Yes, we are. But Aaliyah, you need to know something. Despite all the chaos, despite the forced nature of this marriage, I enjoy having you here. I feel alive again in ways I haven't in years. You make this bearable, even sweet." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears. "Even though this started as a forced marriage?" He nodded. "Especially because it started that way. I didn't choose it, but maybe fate did. I want to protect you, to see you happy. And if you'll let me, maybe we can find love in all of this chaos." Her heart fluttered. The walls she had built around herself, the fear, the doubt, the hesitation, began to crumble. For the first time, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, a forced marriage could lead to something real. The following days were a delicate dance. Aaliyah cooked meals, learning some of Jae-hyun's favorite recipes. He helped her in small ways, showing her how to make his morning tea just right, laughing softly when she fumbled with silverware. One evening, as they shared dessert in the living room, Jae-hyun reached across the table, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Their eyes met. Aaliyah's breath caught. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he said quietly. "You're not afraid to speak your mind, to be honest. And you make me feel like myself again." Aaliyah smiled shyly, her heart pounding. "And you make me feel safe, even though everything is so strange." For a moment, the world outside, the past betrayal, the business deals, the forced circumstances, faded away. Two hearts, uncertain but curious, began to acknowledge a bond neither could ignore. But outside the mansion, shadows still lingered. Hannah's influence, Jae-hyun's business enemies, and the complicated web of wealth and reputation threatened to intrude at any moment. Their fragile trust, their budding affection, could be shattered with a single misstep. Yet, despite the looming threats, a spark had been lit. A spark that neither money, betrayal, nor circumstance could extinguish. In the quiet of the mansion, as the city lights blinked below, Jae-hyun and Aaliyah began to realize something profound. Sometimes, love could bloom even in the most unexpected places, even from the most forced beginnings. And for both of them, that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. The morning sun spilled gold across the mansion, painting the marble floors with warmth. Aaliyah sat by the window, sipping tea, her thoughts tangled with everything that had happened. Hannah's betrayal, the forced marriage, the business deals. All of it weighed on her. Yet, as she looked across the room, she saw Jae-hyun walking toward her, his usual sharp suit replaced with casual attire. There was something softer in his expression today, something personal, something real. "Good morning," he said quietly, sitting beside her. "Morning," she replied, her voice tinged with nervousness. They had shared moments of warmth before, small sparks of connection, but today felt different. The air seemed charged, heavy with anticipation. No sooner had they begun their quiet breakfast than a sudden commotion erupted outside. A car screeched to a halt in the driveway, and Hannah stepped out, her heels clicking on the marble steps. She was flawless, calculated, her presence radiating tension and unresolved emotions. Aaliyah froze, her heart pounding. Jae-hyun's face darkened instantly, a mix of anger and dread crossing his features. "Hannah," he said, his voice controlled but sharp. "What are you doing here?" "I came to finish what I started," Hannah said, her eyes narrowing. "You can't just erase the past. You promised me a future, Jae-hyun. Don't think you can replace me with her." She gestured toward Aaliyah. The word stung, but Aaliyah refused to step back. She held her ground, feeling a strange strength rising within her. Jae-hyun stood, towering, his presence commanding. "Hannah, this ended the day you humiliated me. I chose to move forward, and I won't let you disrupt my life or this woman's life." Hannah's lips curled into a bitter smile. "We'll see about that. You're nothing without me, infertile and incapable. She can't save you from the truth." The word infertile echoed in the room, but instead of breaking him, it strengthened Jae-hyun's resolve. He turned to Aaliyah, taking her hand gently. "Ignore her. She has no power here. Today, we decide what our future is, not her." The tension simmered, but after Hannah stormed off, temporarily thwarted by Jae-hyun's calm authority, Aaliyah and Jae-hyun were left alone in the grand living room. Silence fell, broken only by the soft hum of the city outside. "Jae-hyun," Aaliyah began, voice trembling. "I don't understand. Why are you letting me in? This marriage was forced. You don't have to care." He shook his head, his dark eyes earnest. "Aaliyah, I didn't choose any of this. But since the day you stepped into my life, you've changed everything. I've spent years building walls around myself, walls Hannah could never breach. But you make me want to break them down. You make me want to try again, to feel again. And I think I'm falling in love with you." Her breath caught. The room seemed to shrink around them, the mansion fading into the background. "Falling in love with me?" she whispered, disbelief and hope warring in her chest. "Yes," he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Not because of contracts or desperation or convenience. Because of you, the real you. I love your courage, your honesty, your spirit, everything." Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes. She reached out, placing her hand over his. I think I'm falling too. Even though this was all unexpected. Even though I didn't choose this life. I want to be with you. Truly." The days that followed were filled with planning. But this time, it was different. They were partners in more than name only. Hannah's sporadic attempts to interfere faded as Jaehyun's confidence in Aaliyah grew. Business associates began noticing the change too. His decision-making was sharper, his focus clearer. Even more miraculous, the mansion, once a place of tension and awkwardness, began to feel like home. They cooked together, laughed together, and shared quiet evenings talking about hopes, fears, and dreams. One night, as the city glittered below, Jaehyun pulled Aaliyah close on the balcony. "I don't know what the future holds," he murmured, "but I know that whatever happens, I want you by my side." Aaliyah rested her head on his shoulder. "And I want you too, even if the world thinks this started wrong. I know. It feels right now." The cool breeze carried their whispered promises, wrapping the mansion in a cocoon of warmth and love. But love, as always, was complicated. Aaliyah discovered a personal side to Jaehyun she hadn't seen before. The man who had been hurt by betrayal, the man who feared loss, and the man who longed to be loved without judgment. She encouraged him to speak about Hannah, about the insecurities that haunted him, and slowly, layer by layer, he opened up. One evening, he revealed the truth behind the infertility claim. Medical complications had prevented him from fathering children easily, but it didn't define him. "It doesn't matter who I was before," he said quietly. "What matters is now. What matters is us." Aaliyah squeezed his hand. "Then let's define the future together. Not by the past, not by contracts, not by expectations, but by us." Weeks passed, and the mansion, once a stage of chaos, transformed into a haven of love. They celebrated small victories, from cooking together to sharing quiet laughter in the living room. Jaehyun even surprised her one evening with a handwritten note. "Thank you for saving me from my own despair. Thank you for being you. I love you, Aaliyah." She read it over and over, feeling a warmth she had never imagined possible. In the strange, forced beginnings of their marriage, she had found genuine love. And he, who had been abandoned and humiliated, found trust, companionship, and a woman who saw him for who he truly was. One night, standing on the balcony together, watching the city lights sparkle like stars, Jaehyun whispered, "I know this marriage started as a necessity, but now it's the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you, Aaliyah, completely without restraint." Aaliyah smiled, resting her head on his chest. "And I love you too, Jaehyun. Not because of your wealth, not because of the mansion, not because of the title, but because of who you are. The real you. And I can't imagine life without you." In that moment, the mansion no longer felt like a gilded cage. It was a home. Their hearts, once strangers in the night, were now bound together, not by contract or desperation, but by love, trust, and choice. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, but inside, two hearts had found a sanctuary. And for Jaehyun and Aaliyah, that sanctuary was everything.
Hello besties, in this story we learned that true love often comes from unexpected places and happiness is found in the heart, not in wealth or appearance. Thank you so much for watching. Kindly like, subscribe and share.